Case of Sarah Stern. Sarah Elizabeth Stern was born on March 24, 1997, in Neptune City, New Jersey, to Michael and Susan Stern. As their only child, Sarah received all their love and attention due to her mother's health issues, which made it impossible for her to have more children. Sarah grew up to be an outgoing, cheerful, and energetic kid. She was actively involved in school theater, photography, drawing, and sports, competing in swimming and softball. Her dream was to become an artist or designer, and she planned to attend a local college for arts. Tragedy struck in 2013 when Sarah's mother, Susan, passed away after a long battle with cancer. This devastating loss sent Sarah into depression, but she tried to support her grieving father, Michael, with whom she lived. They found comfort in their dog, Buddy, whom Sarah adored. Sarah's life was finally taking a turn for the better. After graduating from college, she planned to apply to a prestigious university in New York. Before that, she had always dreamed of traveling the world, with Canada being her top destination. She even considered living there for a while. Meanwhile, Michael Stern frequently traveled out of state for work, sometimes for weeks at a time. But he never worried about leaving his daughter Sarah alone at home, because she was a responsible and independent young adult, and their town was known for being quiet and safe. However, during one of Michael's business trips in December 2016, trouble arose. On the night of December 3rd, around 2:30 a.m., a taxi driver called the police station to report an abandoned car on the Belmar Bridge along Highway 35. The area was deserted and rarely visited at night, making the empty vehicle immediately suspicious. The taxi driver, who was taking a shortcut home over the old bridge, had stopped to check if anyone needed help when he saw the car parked by the side of the road. Finding the car empty and no one around, he called the police, suspecting that the driver might have abandoned their car to jump into the water below, a tragic but not uncommon occurrence at that spot. The police found an abandoned silver sedan on a bridge with the keys still in the ignition, but no signs of blood or struggle. They suspected that the owner might have gone there to commit suicide by jumping into the river. After checking the car's ownership, they found it belonged to 85-year-old Lily Stern, who lived in the same town. When the officers visited Lily, they found her alive and well. She told them that she hadn't driven for years due to poor eyesight, and that her 19-year-old granddaughter, Sarah, used the car. Lily tried to call Sarah, but her phone was turned off. Lily then gave the officers her son's address, where Sarah lived, and mentioned that her father was away on a work trip. When the police went to the house, they found the back door open, which was concerning. After searching the house, they didn't find anything suspicious, except for a locked-in dog whining. In one of the bedrooms, the house was in order with no signs of struggle, blood, or evidence of an intruder. However, Sarah was nowhere to be found. Michael Stern rushed home on the first available flight after learning about the situation. When he arrived, the homeowner informed him that nothing was out of place or missing, including all of Sarah's personal belongings, such as her passport, driver's license, and mobile phone, which she always carried with her. The police shared their initial theory with Michael, suggesting that Sarah might have gone to the bridge intending to jump, and asked if he had noticed any signs of suicidal thoughts or self-harm attempts. Michael admitted that Sarah had struggled with depression after her mother's passing, but with support from family, friends, and her studies, she had recovered. She had ambitious plans for her future, including becoming a designer and traveling the world. Despite this, on the night of December 3rd, Sarah disappeared from her home, and her car was found abandoned on the bridge just hours later. These were the known facts, and the investigation now needed to focus on identifying who Sarah had been in contact with that day, what conversations she had, and who was the last person to see her. After Sarah Stern's disappearance, early witnesses came forward to reveal that she had spent most of December 2nd with her childhood friend, Liam McCatasney. As the last person to see her, Liam had valuable information that could help solve the mysterious case. The police quickly decided to interview him to gather details and piece together what had happened that day. When the police arrived at Liam's house, they met his mother, who told them that her son was sleeping after working a night shift. At the officer's request, she woke Liam up who seemed puzzled by the situation. Upon learning about Sarah's disappearance, Liam was shocked and confirmed that they had indeed spent the previous day together. He agreed to go to the police station to give a statement. Liam and Sarah attended college together and decided to skip their last 2 lectures on Friday morning. After classes, they went back to her place where they spent the day playing video games, chatting, and discussing their future plans. They left her house twice, once to get food from a nearby fast food restaurant, and again to visit a local supermarket around 7 p.m. Liam then left Sarah's house to start his night shift at a 24-hour store and didn't see her again after that. When questioned about Sarah's mental state, Liam shared that she had been struggling with depression since her mother's death. She was torn between wanting to end her life or running away to start fresh. Liam also revealed that Sarah had difficulty communicating with her father and finding common ground with him. Although Liam didn't rule out the possibility that Sarah might have taken her own life, he mentioned that she had recently considered moving to Canada and had even exchanged some money for Canadian dollars. This was later confirmed when a small amount of Canadian currency was found in her bedside table drawer, although it wasn't enough to cover much. Preston Taylor, a close friend of Sarah's and her prom date, corroborated Liam's statement. He added that Sarah was struggling with depression and speculated that she might have either run away to Canada or jumped off the bridge. By the end of the conversation, Preston was overcome with emotion, expressing his deep affection for Sarah. The idea that Sarah had fled to Canada or elsewhere was quickly ruled out, as she didn't have her passport and couldn't have left the country. Investigators then focused on the possibility that Sarah might have jumped off the bridge, and a massive search effort was launched in the river. The strong current in the area complicated the search, as it could have carried a body far from the bridge. To aid in the search, divers were deployed, specialized equipment was used, and hundreds of volunteers, along with police, scoured the riverbanks for any signs of Sarah or her belongings. Liam and Preston were among the volunteers who actively helped search for Sarah. Unfortunately, the search efforts yielded nothing, and no sign of Sarah was found. As a result, the authorities decided to continue interviewing people who knew Sarah well, which led to the discovery of a strange inconsistency. Sarah's friends and classmates described her as being in great spirits, with none of them aware of any problems she had with her father. In fact, she often spoke about him in a warm and loving way. However, after she disappeared, her friends Liam and Preston seemingly took on the role of grieving relatives, garnering sympathy from many. But their behavior soon raised suspicions, as if they were acting for an audience. Despite only recently becoming close, the police decided to re-question Liam and Preston, noticing that their behavior was odd. During the re-questioning, Liam appeared deeply distressed when asked about his relationship with Sarah and Preston. Liam revealed that the 3 of them grew up together, attended the same school, and shared their deepest secrets and dreams. Preston had even taken Sarah to the prom, but their relationship was purely platonic. Liam considered Sarah like a sister, and they had even listed each other as siblings on social media. Sarah trusted him completely and had confided in him about the large sum of money her mother had left her, which was mostly stored in a safety deposit box. Sarah supposedly distrusted her father, who she thought wanted the money for himself, so she kept it in the bank with plans to withdraw it later, to escape to Canada. However, Michael Stern disputed this story, providing a different account. According to Stern, his wife had been saving money for their daughter's future expenses, such as education, a wedding, or a home since Sarah's birth. They stored the cash at home in a shoebox, which contained old and worn bills that didn't seem significant at the time. After his wife's passing, Stern gave the box of money to Sarah, advising her to deposit the old and worn bills into the bank. Sarah followed his advice, putting some of the money in her checking account for daily expenses and renting a safety deposit box for the rest. She intended to use the money to fund her university education and travel the world. Michael firmly denied any claim to the money for his own use. The discovery of the missing student's large sum of money led investigators to suspect that someone might have targeted her for financial gain. They decided to investigate her financial transactions, including her safety deposit box and bank records. The investigation revealed that Sarah had withdrawn a substantial amount of money from an ATM just a few days before she disappeared. She also visited her bank to withdraw cash from her safety deposit box. The detectives were surprised to find that Sarah was not alone during her bank visit. Bank surveillance footage showed that Liam accompanied her. This raised new questions, as Liam had failed to mention this visit during previous questioning. When asked about it, Liam hesitated before explaining that Sarah trusted only him and had asked for his accompaniment because she was afraid to carry a large amount of cash home alone. His explanation seemed reasonable and his behavior appeared natural. A security camera at a house opposite the Stern residence captured footage of the street and neighboring yards. The footage showed that Liam stayed at Sarah's house until 7 p.m., then left for work and didn't return. The silver sedan was seen leaving the garage around 11 p.m. that night. About a month after Sarah's disappearance, an acquaintance named Anthony came to the police station with a disturbing story. Unaware of the events, Anthony had been out of town for several weeks. It turned out that Anthony had been classmates with Sarah, Liam, and Preston, and after graduation pursued a passion for filmmaking, remaining in touch only with Liam, who shared his interest in cinema. About a month and a half before Sarah disappeared, Liam visited Anthony and they spent an evening brainstorming ideas for a teenage horror movie. Liam came up with a plot where a girl tells a friend about a large sum of money she has, and the friend gains her trust before strangling her and dumping her body in a river. Anthony liked the idea, and they wrote a couple of pages of the script that night. Anthony later moved on to another project, forgot about the story, and left town to work as a camera assistant on a film shoot. When he returned, Liam unexpectedly called him. Asking if the police had questioned him about anything, Anthony was surprised by the question and learned about Sarah's disappearance and the suspicious circumstances surrounding it. He decided to go to the police himself. The authorities instructed Anthony to have an open conversation with Liam and try to get him to confess. To do this, Anthony invited Liam to work on a project that required renting expensive camera equipment. Knowing Liam's desire to be in a movie, Liam took the bait and suggested they meet in person to discuss the details. The police installed a hidden camera in Anthony's car and told him to carefully get Liam to confess when they met. When Liam got into the car, he looked around cautiously, then handed Anthony an envelope containing $2,000 in old bills, saying it was for the filming equipment. Anthony asked where Liam got the old money, and Liam hesitated before admitting that it belonged to Sarah, saying that he and Preston had taken it from her house because the dead don't need it. Although Liam didn't provide further details, his admission was enough evidence for the police to arrest him and Preston on suspicion of being accomplices. Preston agreed to cooperate with the authorities and made a deal with the prosecution. He admitted to helping his friend Liam cover up the evidence and dispose of Sarah's body, but claimed he did not participate in the murder itself. According to Preston, Liam had planned to steal Sarah's inheritance as soon as he found out about it. Sarah had kept the inheritance a secret, even from her best friend, but revealed it to Liam when she started planning a trip to Canada. Liam convinced her to withdraw the money from the bank and keep it in a home safe, and even borrowed a significant amount from her before the murder. When Sarah's father was away on a business trip, Liam put his plan into action. He promised Preston $25,000 to help him, but planned to do the actual killing himself. Liam convinced Sarah to withdraw the money, and then spent the day with her, waiting for the right moment to strike. He locked her dog in another room, approached Sarah from behind, and strangled her. The crime unfolding was more complicated than anticipated. Initially, Sarah, being athletic and strong, put up a fierce struggle until she lost consciousness. However, she would occasionally show signs of life, making it difficult for the perpetrator to be certain of her demise. It took around half an hour to confirm that Sarah had stopped breathing. After leaving Sarah's house, Liam went to work, at which point Preston entered the house through the back door. Avoiding the camera's view, Preston dragged Sarah's body to the garage and cleaned up the room. A few hours later, returned to Sarah's house, took a small safe from her room, and placed the body in the car. He drove away carefully to avoid being captured on the neighbor's camera. Liam met Preston at the bridge, where they disposed of the body in the river. They wiped down the steering wheel and drove back to Liam's house in Preston's car to divide the stolen money. However, they were disappointed to find only $110,000 in the safe. rather than the expected $100,000. Despite this, they decided not to spend the old bills immediately to avoid raising suspicion. Preston buried the safe in a local park, and they only used the money Sarah had withdrawn from her account. Despite confessing, Liam McAtasney denied involvement, trying to blame his friend instead. His lawyer claimed he was innocent, suggesting Taylor had acted alone. Since Sarah's body was never found and her disappearance was still unclear, there was a small chance she was still alive, having vanished without her belongings. However, a search of Liam's house found a key matching the buried safe. Identified by Preston, the trial lasted over 2 years, but despite the lack of a body and Liam's denials, his guilt was proven through evidence. The script written months before the incident, the key found in his home, his recorded words in Anthony's car, and the old bills he provided all contributed to the verdict. Furthermore, fingerprints of both Preston and Liam were found inside the safe, and a colleague testified that Liam was absent from work that night, asking to be covered. Liam McAtasney was sentenced to life in prison without parole. His accomplice, who did not directly participate in the crime, received an 18-year sentence for obstructing justice and hindering the investigation. Montreal, a vibrant city in Canada, nestled on the banks of the St. Lawrence River, captivates with its unique blend of old-world charm and modern dynamism. Home to over 1.7 million people, this cultural melting pot embraces diversity and celebrates its multicultural heritage. French and English coexist harmoniously, painting the city with a bilingual tapestry of languages. From the stunning architecture of Old Montreal to the bustling neighborhood of Plateau Mont-Royal and Mile End, every street exudes a vibrant energy. And this is the backdrop to the chilling story of Sharon Prior. On the chilly day of February 9, 1959, in the vibrant city of Montreal, Canada, a girl named Sharon Kim Prior was born. Her parents, Yvonne and George Prior, were filled with boundless joy at the arrival of their firstborn. Yvonne, born in England, had migrated with her parents to settle in Point St. Charles, locally known as the Point, a neighborhood in the borough of Les Shores West, in the city of Montreal, Quebec, Canada. It was there that she met George, a dedicated soldier in the Canadian Armed Forces. Despite his devotion to duty, love intervened, and their connection grew into marriage. Overjoyed by their union, Yvonne and George eagerly awaited the arrival of their first child. Their anticipation reached its pinnacle on Sharon's birthday, as they welcomed a beautiful baby girl into their lives. Sharon's innocent face and radiant smile brought immense happiness to her parents' hearts, but fate had more in store for the Prior family. Just a day before Sharon's second birthday, on February 8, 1961, Yvonne gave birth to twin sisters Doreen and Maureen. In the eyes of little Sharon, they were the best birthday present she could have ever wished for. However, life is full of twists and turns, and in 1962, George received transfer orders that would uproot the family from Point St. Charles to Manitoba. In their new surroundings, the Prior family welcomed their youngest addition, George Jr., but alas, even the strongest bonds sometimes fray. And in 1965, Yvonne and George decided to part ways. Yvonne, now a resilient single mother, returned to her beloved Point St. Charles. Yvonne's decision to return to the Point was not arbitrary. It was a deliberate choice rooted in love and practicality. The neighborhood, with its affordable living and tight-knit community, promised a safe haven for her children to thrive in. From an early age, Sharon exuded a gentle, caring nature that extended to the world around her. Animals found solace in her presence, as she often took in strays, tenderly nursing them back to health. Her twin sisters Doreen and Maureen often reminisced about Sharon's dreams of becoming a veterinarian. Sharon, initially reserved, discovered a welcoming community that embraced her. The Boys and Girls Club provided a space where her interests thrived, particularly through her active involvement in floor hockey and artistic pursuits. In the midst of their teenage years, Sharon discovered solace in the presence of a young man named John. Their love story held a touch of destiny, as John had been Sharon's secret crush since the 4th grade days. As time passed, their friendship deepened and blossomed into a profound romance. Sharon also had a close-knit circle of friends, whether it was roaming the streets of Point St. Charles, discovering hidden nooks and crannies, or gathering at the local hangout spot to revel in carefree conversations. Their bond was unbreakable. Through it all, Sharon remained grounded and appreciative of her mother, Yvonne, who had selflessly devoted herself to the well-being of her children. Sharon recognized the sacrifices her mother had made and cherished the unwavering love and guidance she provided. On the eve of Easter, Saturday, March 29, 1975, 16-year-old Sharon Prior's day unfolded with a sense of anticipation. As the clock struck 1 p.m., Sharon had begun her Easter weekend by completing her morning routine: breakfast, washing up, getting dressed, and tidying her bed. Meanwhile, her mother, Yvonne, headed out for some last-minute Easter dinner shopping. Jojo, Sharon's 11-year-old brother, and Stephen, the 4-year-old foster child, were still eager to search for Easter eggs, wanted to make the day extra special for them. With creativity in mind, Sharon decided to make and paint Easter eggs. She boiled 8 eggs and left them cool. At 3 p.m., Yvonne returned home and joined Sharon at the kitchen table, watching her paint the eggs. Sharon asked if the paint would dry in time for the next day. Yvonne suggested painting half the eggs in the egg cups and finishing the rest later. Around 3:45 p.m., Sharon realized it was time to pick up her Leo Boys jacket from the Boys and Girls Club. The Boys and Girls Club provided opportunity for children to play in a variety of sports, from basketball to hockey, without it costing the families anything. And when it started in 1952, the association consisted of 2 teams made of 30 or more children, and every child got a green Leo's jacket. That was earned through selling raffle tickets. Sharon had sold enough raffle tickets to get her very own jacket. Excited, she asked Yvonne if she could take Stephen with her. Yvonne agreed, and off they went. Unfortunately, when Sharon arrived at the club, they did not have her size. Disappointed, she received a receipt to claim it another day. She thought about getting a smaller size for Stephen, since he needed a fitting spring coat. On her way back, she dropped off her friend's jacket. Back home by 4:15 p.m., Sharon continued painting the remaining Easter eggs. Then around 4:30 p.m., the Reverend paid a visit to their home. He greeted them and brought them a large box of chocolate turtles for everyone to enjoy. They gathered around the kitchen table, and while Sharon painted, she asked her mom if they had a book about the Easter Bunny to read to Stephen. The Reverend suggested that Sharon share the true story of Easter, and she gladly accepted the opportunity. Between 6 and 7 p.m., Sharon's close friend, who happened to live on the same block as her, arrived at her house. They had known each other since they were both 5 years old, forming a deep bond over the years. Despite their long-standing friendship, they didn't frequently spend time together with Sharon's group of friends, likely due to attending different high schools. As Sharon excitedly shared her plans to go to Marina's Pizzeria, they indulged in lighthearted banter and playful teasing. Her friend couldn't help but laugh at the amusing sight of Sharon constantly changing her tops and scrutinizing herself in the mirror, striving to achieve that perfect look. Ultimately, after much deliberation, Sharon decided to borrow one of her mother's tops, adding a touch of familiarity to her ensemble. Marina's Pizzeria, a local hangout located on the corner of Wellington and Ash Avenue, held a special place in Sharon's social circle. It served as a popular meeting spot for her friends, where they could gather and engage in lively conversation about various topics, such as boys and the latest music trends. The restaurant was conveniently located just 5 short blocks away from Sharon's house. As Sharon prepared to leave, she bid farewell to her mother, who reminded her to be cautious. Worried about the rainy weather, Sharon contemplated whether to wear her brown suede jacket, fearing it might get damaged. Her mother assured her that it was merely drizzling outside and not enough to harm the jacket, alleviating her concerns. With a final goodbye to her mother, Sharon headed out the door, her mother's cautionary words lingering in her mind. Outside, her friend was already waiting on the sidewalk. She kindly offered to accompany Sharon on her walk to Marina's, but Sharon politely declined, appreciating the gesture nonetheless. Crossing the street, Sharon embarked on her journey, excited about the evening of fun and camaraderie that awaited her at the beloved pizzeria. Sharon's friends eagerly anticipated her arrival, but to their surprise, she never showed up. They assumed that she had accompanied John and the other boys they usually hung out with to a hockey game. However, when the game ended and the boys arrived at the restaurant, Sharon was nowhere to be found. In fact, none of them had seen her throughout the entire night. Meanwhile, back at Sharon's home, the situation mirrored the confusion and worry. Sharon had surpassed her curfew without any communication to her mother, leaving her concerned. Yvonne grew increasingly anxious as this behavior was completely out of character for her daughter. Determined to ensure Sharon's safety, Yvonne decided to stay awake and wait for her return. As the clock struck 1:30 a.m., Yvonne found herself positioned in the living room, anxiously peering out the window while the twins from their bedroom window joined in the watchful vigil. Sadly, there was no sign of Sharon the following morning. Yvonne embarked on a mission to gather information, reaching out to Sharon's friends and even contacting John. However, none of them had any knowledge of Sharon's whereabouts or had seen her recently. The lack of information only deepened Yvonne's concern and heightened the mystery surrounding Sharon's disappearance. During one of the calls, Yvonne spoke with Sharon's friend, Mary, and she shared disturbing information with her. Mary told Yvonne that a woman named Cheryl Vav had been attacked on Ash Avenue after 7 p.m. Yvonne couldn't help but worry upon hearing this news, as the direction in which the assailant fled could potentially intersect with Sharon's path. Cheryl, the victim of the attack, recounted the terrifying incident. The assailant had brandished a knife and forcibly grabbed her. Fortunately, before he could cause harm, another passerby intervened, scaring off the attacker. Cheryl provided a description of the assailant, mentioning his blue eyes, a mustache with squared corners, and a low, calm voice. She noted that he was wearing blue jeans, a dark blue ski jacket, and black shoes with pointed toes. Learning about this attack heightened Yvonne's anxiety, considering the possibility that Sharon might have encountered the same assailant. To gather more evidence was brought in to identify her attacker, but her certainty wavered, making it difficult to press charges against anyone. Yvonne grappled with the fear that her daughter may have fallen victim to a similar assault. The lack of concrete information and the uncertainty surrounding Sharon's whereabouts only intensified her worry and further emphasized the urgency of finding her. In a desperate attempt to find Sharon, a massive search operation was initiated, mobilizing hundreds of residents who combed the streets, hoping to locate the missing 16-year-old girl. Despite the collective efforts, the search yielded no results. Yvonne, consumed by worry and desperation, took to the television, appealing to the community for any information that could lead to Sharon's safe return. Unfortunately, this plea also failed to provide any substantial leads or progress in the investigation. As the days passed, a disheartening sense of uncertainty settled upon everyone involved. Some individuals began to speculate that Sharon may have chosen to run away, but her family adamantly rejected this notion. They couldn't fathom the idea that she would willingly abandon the life she loved, a life encompassing her family, friends, and boyfriend. Furthermore, there were no apparent indications or clues suggesting that Sharon had planned to leave her life behind. Notably, she had left behind her bus pass and money at her family's house before embarking on her visit to the pizzeria. Amidst the mounting despair, Yvonne and her family clung to the hope that Sharon would be found safe and sound. The lack of progress in the search and the absence of concrete information only intensified their anguish, leaving them yearning for answers and closure. On April 1st, 1975, at around 6 a.m., Yvonne Prior noticed Ronnie knocking on her friend's door across the street early in the morning. Sensing something was amiss, she approached him, took the newspaper he was holding, and quickly returned home. Yvonne couldn't resist the urge to unravel the truth within the pages. As she opened the newspaper, her worst fears were confirmed. She recognized the picture of her daughter. She uttered with certainty, "I knew it was her. I knew her shoes." The photograph displayed a body lying in the snow. Discovered in Longwell Field, a city approximately 25 minutes away from their neighborhood. Devastated by the news, Yvonne immediately contacted the police to seek confirmation. although she was too distraught to personally identify the body. Instead, she entrusted her brother with the painful task. Ultimately, it was confirmed that the body found was indeed Sharon. The entire community in the point, including her friends, came across the story in the newspaper, and like Yvonne, they were convinced of the tragic truth. Sharon's life had been brutally taken. Sharon's body was discovered by Jacques Beltran, a beekeeper. Jacques had received word that the gate to his apiary had been left open, which was highly unusual. Recalling that he had locked it the night before, he proceeded to investigate. To his surprise, he stumbled upon a partially nude body lying in the snow, approximately 75 feet from the road. Immediately recognizing the gravity of the situation, Jacques promptly contacted the police, marking the beginning of a harrowing investigation. Sharon's murder was a horrifying and brutal act of violence. She had been subjected to assault and severe beatings. When her body was found, she was only wearing her suede jacket, a blue sweater, socks, and shoes. Her jeans were discovered a short distance away, while her underwear was found hanging from a nearby tree branch. Disturbingly, partially chewed tape was entangled in her hair, and tightly clenched branches were grasped in her hand, indicating that she had been alive when her assailant left her in the snow. Examining the scene, investigators uncovered several pieces of crucial evidence. Around 15 feet from the body, tire tracks were found, indicating the presence of a vehicle. Additionally, a blood trail was observed, leading from the parked car to where Sharon's body lay. The absence of drag marks and the lack of mud on Sharon's shoes and socks suggested that she had likely been carried out of the car, leading authorities to suspect the involvement of more than one person due to the apparent ease with which the task was executed. In close proximity to the body, a man's shirt with a size 17 collar and 34-inch sleeves was discovered, believed to have been used as a binding for Sharon's wrist. The size of the shirt led investigators to speculate that the suspect was approximately 6 feet tall. Not far from the crime scene, an imprint of a right shoe, sized 8½ was found next to a gate post. The depth of the imprint indicated that the person responsible may have had a heavier build and must have been at least 6 foot tall. Further evidence included a ring with the word love inscribed on it, a page from an English magazine featuring a young girl, a gun, a car seat cushion, and a receipt for a jacket bearing the name Sharon Prior. The subsequent autopsy revealed that Sharon had been held captive for days before her death. The estimated time of her demise was approximately 20 hours prior to the discovery of her body. The coroner's examination exposed a crushed chest, possibly from the killer kneeling on it, resulting in internal hemorrhaging. Sharon had sustained injuries consistent with the use of a pointed object, such as a ring with multiple bruises on her face, fractures on both sides of her jaw, a broken nose, and a hole in her cheek, possibly caused by a loose tooth during the assault. On April 4, 1975, a somber gathering took place at St. Matthew's Presbyterian Church, as approximately 200 mourners gathered to bid farewell to Sharon Prior and pay their final respects. The atmosphere inside the chapel was heavy with grief and sorrow, as friends, family, and members of the community came together to mourn the tragic loss of a young life. The mourners, deeply wounded by the cruel fate that had befallen Sharon, joined in solidarity to offer their support and condolences to her grieving family. The chapel was filled with a mixture of tears, heartache, and profound sadness as they grappled with the pain of losing someone so young and full of promise. During the service, memories of Sharon were shared, capturing her vibrant spirit, cherished moments, and the impact she had made on those around her. The eulogies and tributes served as a poignant reminder of the void left behind her untimely departure. As Sharon was laid to rest, the weight of the tragedy and the senseless act of violence that took her life hung heavily in the air. After the missing persons report was filed, the investigation into Sharon's abduction and murder was commenced by Detective Sergeants Jacques Dutras and Renaud Lacombe from the Longville Police Department. The detectives developed a theory that the killer had driven the vehicle onto the field and disposed of Sharon's body there. They believed that the killer had returned to the vehicle to retrieve Sharon's jeans and underwear, which were found in different locations the same day as when her body was discovered. The heavier jeans had fallen to the ground, while the underwear ended up on a tree branch. This led the investigators to speculate that the killer was familiar with the local area. The field where Sharon's body was discovered belonged to a beekeeper and was usually padlocked. However, the padlock had been left unhooked, allowing the killer to drive their truck onto the frozen ground. Although the vehicle got stuck in the mud at one point, the frozen mud left behind tire tracks that the police hoped to use to identify the killer's vehicle. The remote location of the crime scene was believed to have been chosen because the field would not be used by the beekeeper until late spring. It appeared that the killer had expected Sharon's body to remain undetected in the frozen field for an extended period. Based on the evidence, the police suspected the involvement of more than one person in Sharon's abduction and murder. They found a trail of blood leading from the tire tracks to where Sharon's body had been dumped. Since there was no mud on Sharon's shoes, it was deduced that she had been carried the entire distance of 15 feet, possibly by two individuals. One theory considered by the detectives was that Sharon had accepted a ride from someone, possibly a passing trucker, on her way to the restaurant and had been attacked and left in the field. Another theory proposed that Sharon had been abducted and held captive for 3 days before being killed and her body being disposed of. Greg McCreary, a profiler who had worked with the FBI, dedicated his efforts to developing theories surrounding the Sharon Prior case. Through his analysis, McCreary formed several conclusions about the attacker. He believed the perpetrator to be a younger individual, possibly in his 20s, who was likely residing in the local area with his parents. McCreary also posited that this wouldn't have been the attacker's first offense. He likely had prior experience. Additionally, McCreary suggested that the same assailant who attempted to harm Cheryl could very well be the person responsible for Sharon's murder. He explained that when killers enter their hunting mindset, they become more inclined to take risks, such as committing a second abduction. McCreary considered the probability of two separate individuals intending to abduct women simultaneously in the same small low-crime area to be statistically unlikely. Therefore, it seemed more plausible that the attacker was the same in both cases. The profile further emphasized that the attacker's familiarity with the area, particularly the disposal site. Since these locations are considered high risk, the assailant would have needed to know the exit points and choose a place that was familiar and provided comfort. McCreary also identified signs of sadistic behavior in the attacker, such as holding a victim captive for days aligned with the sadist pattern. Understanding this pattern can potentially assist in narrowing down the list of suspects. McCreary explained that sadists typically seek compliant victims within their social circle. They initially appear nice and charming, particularly to vulnerable young women. Over time, they become increasingly demanding, exerting control and eventually resorting to degrading and violent behavior. Once compliant victims are no longer available, they may turn to escorts or individuals known for being strange or violent. When even that avenue is exhausted, they resort to hunting strangers. Based on his analysis, McCreary advised the police to investigate individuals with a history of minor domestic arrest or solicitation, as they could potentially fit the profile of Sharon's killer. He also noted that the assailant on the street, who used a knife to try to abduct Cheryl, lacked strong interpersonal skills. This indicated that the attacker knew he couldn't manipulate her with sophisticated deception and resorted to violence instead. The wounds found on Sharon's face further suggested that her killer lacked the skills necessary to maintain control, leading him to rely on violence. McCreary concluded that since the abduction seemed to be carried out by a stranger, the perpetrator would likely be classified as a serial offender. Serial murders of this nature rarely cease their activities on their own, making it crucial to pursue an aggressive investigation to bring the killer to justice. The Longville Police Department grappling with the investigation into Sharon Prior's brutal murder harbored concerns that her tragic death might be connected to the killings of other girls. One such murder was of Norma O'Brien, a 12-year-old girl who had been found lifeless in a field near Chattagoy the previous summer. Norma had suffered assault and mutilation, and like Sharon, she had died as a result of asphyxiation. Approximately a year later, the disappearance of 14-year-old Debbie Fisher intensified the police's worries. Debbie had set off on her bicycle from her uncle's residence, intending to reach her family's home just 10 minutes away. However, she never arrived, prompting an immediate investigation by the authorities. Her disappearance occurred in close proximity to where Norma O'Brien had vanished the year before. Tragically, Debbie Fisher's lifeless body was discovered in an abandoned car in the woods. She had been brutally beaten with a rock. While Sharon Prior's case remained unresolved, a breakthrough occurred in the investigation into Debbie Fisher's murder. The police were able to apprehend a suspect, a minor who was only a few years older than Fisher herself. Due to a publication ban, the public was restricted from knowing the killer's identity, and he was referred to as simply MX. The perpetrator served his time in prison, but was eventually released. The unsettling connection between these tragic cases highlighted the deep concern within the community and law enforcement about a potential serial killer operating in the area. Despite interviewing 38 individuals in connection with the case, including suspects like Frank Daly, also known as Jerry Moore, the manager of the pizzeria, and several individuals associated with him, as well as beekeeper Jacques Beltran, his co-owner Roger Augrey, and Raymond Ahmed, the owner of the adjacent property. The police were unable to gather sufficient evidence to bring charges against anyone. Even Sharon's close friends and boyfriend were interviewed, but no breakthrough emerged from these inquiries. As time passed, dried up and information ceased to come in. Despite the detectives' confidence in the evidence collected, the case eventually went cold, leaving Sharon's murder unresolved. In the year 2000, Yvonne wrote a letter to the police, requesting a review of evidence in Sharon Prior's case. Yvonne hoped that the advancements in technology could shed new light on the investigation. However, her request was denied a week later, as the police had discarded the majority of the evidence in 1995. This news left Yvonne feeling hurt and distraught, but she persisted in asking the police to locate Sharon's clothing, which fortunately had been preserved. The clothing was analyzed, and finally, the police obtained a DNA sample that did not match Sharon's. In July 2004, the police received a tip regarding a garage space where Sharon might have been held captive. The garage was situated behind an apartment building, and the hope was to find some of Sharon's DNA for further investigation. 3 samples were collected, but unfortunately, none have matched Sharon's or the profile of her murderer. An update in 2012 involved an anonymous donor, increasing the reward to $10,000 and establishing a dedicated phone line for tips. This development sparked speculation among the public, suggesting that new information had surfaced. Another avenue explored was the hypnosis session conducted on the woman who saved Cheryl Waugh, hoping to extract additional details from that fateful day. Following the session, the police presented her with several photos and one man stood out to her. The man in question was William Patrick Fife, a convicted Canadian serial killer responsible for the deaths of 5 women in Montreal, although he claimed to have killed as many as 9. Fife's first known killing occurred in 1979, which didn't align with Sharon's case in 1975. There was no evidence connecting Fife to Sharon Prior, and it remained unclear if the police had compared DNA or thoroughly investigated this lead. Over the years, amateur investigators have attempted to link Sharon's murder with others and have brought forth alleged confessions. One such confession was mentioned in the book The Hard Road by Peter Edwards, which briefly references Sharon's murder and implicates a member of the Montreal Satan's Choice motorcycle club named Mike French. However, these claims and suspects have remained speculative and no definitive evidence has emerged to support them. Despite the speculation and the various leads explored throughout the years, Sharon Prior's case remained unresolved, leaving her family and community seeking answers and closure. Between July and August 2019, DNA samples from the suspect at the crime scene, including samples from Sharon Prior's clothing, were sent to Parabon Nanolabs, a company based in Ruston, Virginia, that develops nanopharmaceuticals and provides DNA phenotyping services for law enforcement organizations. The purpose was to get a prediction result from the DNA sample, and the prediction result matched a man with fair skin or very fair skin, green or hazel eyes, brown hair, and a selection to other freckles. Then in June 8, 2022, a significant breakthrough was achieved when Montreal Laboratory analyzed the suspect's Y chromosome DNA in comparison with the Pisces database. The analysis results made it possible to target the priority name Romain or Romain. Franklin Romain, who had addresses in Montreal and Longueville in the 1970s, emerged as a potential suspect. The tire tracks found at the crime scene were compatible with the vehicle registered under Romine's name in Montreal. Franklin Maywood Romine had an extensive criminal record in the United States and had encounters with the Montreal police. DNA samples were obtained from Romine's 2 living brothers, who willingly provided them to West Virginia police. Both brothers testified that they believed their brother had committed the murder. Family photos depicted Romine as a tall man with reddish-brown hair and a mustache. Unfortunately, Romine passed away in Canada in 1982 and was buried in West Virginia. The police have strong reasons to believe that Romine is the suspect in Sharon Prior's case. He was living in Montreal at the time of the crime, was familiar with the abduction scene, and matched the witness description. Additionally, DNA analysis indicated a connection between the DNA found at the crime scene and the Romine family. Romine also matched the description of a man who had attempted to kidnap Cheryl while at knife point in close proximity to where Sharon Prior disappeared. Documents filed in court revealed that one of Romine's brothers confessed that Romine had attempted to abuse his wife. The analysis of DNA from the Romine family indicated a strong likelihood of a familial connection to the crime scene DNA. To further investigate the potential link, Romine's body was exhumed with the consent of the court, despite opposition from his sisters and 2 brothers due to religious beliefs. On May 8, 2023, the DNA from Romine's remains was being tested at Montreal Laboratory, and the results are expected to be available by approximately May 22, 2023. The new suspect Franklin Romine was not among the more than 100 individuals previously investigated by police in connection with Sharon Prior's murder. The identity of Romine as a suspect came as a surprise to the Prior family's lawyer, Mark Belmar. Although he had not discussed the matter with the family, Belmar emphasized the importance of additional information in cases of missing or murdered individuals and expressed hope that this new development would bring some comfort to the Prior family. The ongoing testing and investigation surrounding Franklin Romine and the potential DNA match have raised hopes of finally obtaining answers and justice in the unresolved case of Sharon Prior's murder. The friends and family of Sharon Prior have been deeply affected by her tragic murder and have shared their thoughts and memories about her. Still living in the neighborhood of Point St. Charles sent a powerful message through a friend, urging all mothers to watch over and love their daughters. Yvonne Prior, Sharon's mother, shared her feelings with the media and expressed her enduring hope that the person responsible would one day be found. She spoke of Sharon's loving nature, saying, "Everybody loved her. She was just wonderful to be around." Sharon's sister Doreen Prior reflected on the loss and wondered what her sister's life could have been like. She questioned who Sharon would have become, speculating if she would have pursued a career as a veterinarian, which she had shown an affinity for. Doreen's twin sister, Maureen Prior, expressed her determination to confront Sharon's killer and unravel the truth. She expressed her strong desire to know the identity of the perpetrator, as well as the details surrounding the incident, emphasizing her need for answers regarding who, what, when, and where. The Prior family, friends, and the community as a whole had been waiting for answers for about a half a century, hoping for justice and closure in Sharon Prior's case. While the recent breakthrough brings a glimmer of hope, it is a reminder of the enduring pain and the importance of finding the truth for the sake of Sharon's memory and those who loved her. As we reflect on the recent breakthrough and the impact it had on her friends and family, it's clear that this case has left an indelible mark on the community. The case of Rebecca Blenik. Rebecca and Tim, who met at Quincy University, were the epitome of a perfect couple. Rebecca was a biology major and a tennis player, while Tim was a star football player. 2 years after graduating, the practical couple decided to tie the knot. Instead of splurging on an engagement ring and a lavish honeymoon, they chose to save their money. Although Rebecca had a genuine interest in medicine and had dreamed of becoming a doctor, she decided to pursue motherhood instead. Her dream came true when she and Tim had 3 sons. Tim was known for his charisma and ability to entertain. In 2008, he auditioned for American Gladiators, making it to the final round. Years later, in 2019, he received an invitation from the producers of Family Feud to participate in the show with his family. Rebecca's nursing school commitments prevented her from joining Tim on the TV show Family Feud. Undeterred, Tim assembled a team of family members, including his parents and brothers. The show's format features two teams competing to guess the most popular responses to survey questions from 100 people. Despite being unprepared, Tim's team performed well, earning points and ranking second on the scoreboard. They went on to participate in 3 episodes, winning a total of $20,000, which was divided equally among the family members. However, Tim did not share any of the winnings with his wife, Rebecca. This decision highlights the strain on Tim and Rebecca's marriage, which began when Rebecca pursued a nursing career against Tim's wishes. Tim had expressed concerns about Rebecca's well-being and ability to manage stress, but Rebecca's friends believed Tim was opposed to her independence and autonomy. Rebecca's friends noticed that she was becoming increasingly unhappy in her marriage over time. At first, her marriage to Tim was relatively happy for about 5 years. But then Tim started to become more controlling and manipulative. Despite Rebecca's hard work in her nursing studies and job, Tim didn't pull his weight at home, leaving Rebecca to handle most of the responsibilities. Rebecca realized that their marriage was struggling and wanted to fix it, so she suggested that they go to marriage counseling together. She believed that counseling could help them find solutions and improve their relationship. However, Tim refused to go despite Rebecca's efforts to save their marriage. In January 2021, after 11 years of marriage, Tim suddenly filed for divorce, which caught Rebecca off guard. She had been committed to working through their issues, but Tim had already made up his mind. He moved out of their family home and into a new house across town, leaving Rebecca to pick up the pieces. Tim and Rebecca's divorce was extremely contentious. They were unable to agree on anything, and their communication broke down completely. The couple disputed several issues, including who would get custody of the children, how they would divide their property, and how much alimony one would pay the other. Things escalated to the point where Tim felt threatened and applied for a court order to protect himself from Rebecca, alleging that she was stalking and harassing him. Rebecca had a different view of the situation, accusing Tim of harassment. She shared her concerns with friends through text messages describing incidents where Tim yelled at her, pushed her in front of their sons, and threw things. Rebecca feared Tim might do something drastic to take her children away, which alarmed her sister, who knew Rebecca's fears were valid and that she needed help to protect herself. Rebecca then filed for an order of protection against him, claiming he entered her home without permission and lied about their interactions. However, the judge denied both Rebecca and Tim's requests, instead ordering them to stay away from each other's homes, except during child custody exchanges. In February 2023, Tim told the police he wouldn't return a gun, calling Rebecca a derogatory name. At the time, Rebecca and Tim's 3 sons, age 12, 10, and 5, was staying with Tim at his home, just a mile from Rebecca's residence. Their divorce was set to be finalized in just 1 week. Tim contacted Rebecca's father the next day, worried because he couldn't reach Rebecca, and she had failed to pick up the boys from school as planned. Given Rebecca's dedication as a mother, her father suspected something was seriously wrong. Concerned for Rebecca's safety, her father rushed to her house. When he arrived, he entered the house, calling out to Rebecca, but received no response. He went upstairs to her bedroom, where he found a disturbing scene. Rebecca lay on her back, covered in blood and gunshot wounds. After Rebecca's father discovered her body in the bathroom, detectives and forensic experts arrived at the house. They began by carefully examining the outside of the property, searching for clues. Their investigation revealed that the suspect had probably entered the house by forcing open an upstairs window in one of the children's bedrooms. The discovery led investigators to believe that the suspect used a patio chair to gain access to the house and climb up to the roof. By retracing the suspect's likely path, they went to Rebecca's bedroom, where they found the door had been violently kicked in or broken. The state of the door suggested to investigators that the suspect had forcibly entered the room, probably in search of Rebecca. Evidence indicated that Rebecca had tried to barricade herself in the bathroom, but the suspect had pursued her and caught up. Ultimately, the suspect shot Rebecca inside the bathroom. During their search of the bathroom, where Rebecca's body was found, investigators stumbled upon her cell phone. Upon examining Rebecca's phone, investigators found a 911 911 call dialed at 1:11 a.m. This led them to form a theory about the events of that night. They believed that as the suspect chased Rebecca through the house, she tried to call for help, but accidentally dialed a wrong number before she could try calling 911 again. The misdialed call at 1:11 a.m. suggested to investigators that the suspect had knocked the phone out of Rebecca's hand. They believed Rebecca was likely killed around this time. However, when police questioned Rebecca's neighbors, none of them remembered hearing any noise around 1:11 a.m., which raised suspicions among the investigators. A thorough search of Rebecca's house revealed that her murder was not a botched burglary, as nothing was stolen. Despite this, the perpetrator left behind significant evidence. One notable discovery was a partial shoe print found near the point where the suspect entered the house. The shoe print discovered at the crime scene could be crucial in identifying the type of shoe worn by the suspect, including its make and model, as well as providing details about the size and shape of their feet. The presence of 8.9mm shell casings and small pieces of shredded plastic near Rebecca's body also provide significant leads for the investigators. Despite collecting these key pieces of evidence, the investigators were unsure how to interpret their findings. To gain more insight, they decided to send the evidence to forensic laboratories for further analysis. Specifically, they wanted to determine if any of Rebecca's personal belongings matched the evidence found at the crime scene. The investigation began when Rebecca's father found her lifeless body in the bathroom of her home. Upon arriving at the scene, investigators carefully examined the exterior of the house, leading them to identify how the perpetrator gained entry by prying open an upstairs window in one of the children's bedrooms. Here's what likely happened. The suspect used a patio chair to climb up to the roof and entered the house. The investigators retraced the suspect's steps and found that the bedroom door had been violently kicked in or broken, suggesting the suspect had forced their way in, probably looking for Rebecca. It seems Rebecca tried to barricade herself in the bathroom, but the suspect caught up with her. Unfortunately, the suspect shot and killed Rebecca in the bathroom. The investigators found Rebecca's phone near her body and examined it. They discovered that she had dialed 911, but mistakenly entered an extra digit, 91126, at 1:11 a.m. This discovery helped the investigators piece together the events. They believe Rebecca was desperately trying to call for help as the suspect chased her through the house, but she accidentally dialed the wrong number. Before she could try calling 911 again, the suspect likely knocked the phone out of her hand. The timing of the misdialed call at 1:11 a.m. led investigators to believe that Rebecca's murder likely occurred around that time. However, when they questioned Rebecca's neighbors, none of them reported hearing any suspicious noises, which was surprising given the fact that she had suffered multiple gunshot wounds. A thorough search of Rebecca's house revealed that her murder was not the result of a burglary gone wrong, as nothing was stolen. Despite this, the perpetrator left behind a significant amount of evidence. One crucial discovery was a partial shoe print near the point of entry, which could help identify the brand and model of the shoe, as well as the size and shape of the suspect's foot. The crime scene also yielded 8.9mm shell casings, and small pieces of shredded plastic were found scattered near Rebecca's body. After gathering all the evidence, the investigators were unsure what to make of their findings, so they decided to send the said evidence to forensic laboratories for further analysis. The detectives wanted to determine if any of the evidence found at the crime scene matched Rebecca's belongings. A neighbor had installed a security camera on the side of their house after their car was broken into a year earlier. The camera was directed towards the neighbor's driveway, which shared a boundary with Rebecca's home, and was set to turn on and alert the neighbor whenever it detected movement. Although the camera didn't capture anything significant on the night of Rebecca's death, it did record something unusual the previous day at 1:05 a.m. The footage showed a person walking down the driveway towards the back of Rebecca's house, a potentially crucial discovery in the case. About 48 minutes after the initial sighting, the same individual was seen walking in the opposite direction. Interestingly, Rebecca's neighbor had captured a similar incident on their camera about a week prior, on February 14th. After reviewing their security footage, Rebecca's neighbors noticed a suspicious dark-clad figure lurking around her house on Valentine's Day, prompting them to alert her immediately. Upon learning about the mysterious figure, Rebecca became increasingly paranoid. Although she claimed not to have seen anyone on her property, she had heard unsettling voices in her backyard the previous night, which frightened her. Based on the security camera footage, the police expanded their search to neighboring houses to gather more evidence of the dark-clad individual. Their search led them to a house near the Quinney Bus Barn, where they found footage of a person riding a bike, dressed in dark clothing, heading towards Rebecca's house. These videos confirmed the description of the mysterious person seen in the original driveway footage, providing a clear consistency in the suspect's appearance. After analyzing the recorded times of the videos, detectives suspected that the person on the bike was the same individual seen in Rebecca's driveway footage. Although Rebecca's neighbor's security camera didn't capture footage of the mysterious person on the night of her murder, officers found footage of someone on a bike riding towards Rebecca's house just before and after the incident. This person matched the description of the individual seen lurking in Rebecca's driveway in the days leading up to her murder. While the video evidence was helpful in the investigation, its poor quality limited the information it provided. The detectives couldn't identify the person in the video due to the grainy image, making it difficult to determine their gender. However, they did notice one distinctive feature. The bike had no reflectors on its wheels. When Rebecca's sister heard that she was murdered, only one person came to mind as a suspect: Rebecca's estranged husband, Tim. Rebecca's sister, who had a first-hand account of the contentious divorce between Rebecca and Tim, shared this information with the detectives working on her sister's case. The detectives suspected Tim of murdering Rebecca, especially since her murder happened just a week before their divorce was due to be finalized. During the investigation, they made a crucial discovery. A bike with no reflectors on its wheels, similar to the one seen on security footage, was found just a block from Tim's house. This discovery increased the suspicion surrounding Tim, leading the detectives to obtain a search warrant for his home. When the police executed the warrant, Tim cooperated fully, standing outside his home with the officers as they searched his belongings. On March 13, 2023, 2 weeks after Rebecca's murder, Tim was arrested and charged with her murder. When his mugshot was released, Rebecca's family and friends were shocked by his appearance, which was very different from the clean-cut man they had known. Tim's friends and family were shocked by his disheveled appearance, which they attributed to the emotional toll of his recent divorce. His once neat and tidy hair was now unkempt, and his clothes were messy. They speculated that the divorce had affected not only his physical appearance, but also his mental well-being. However, Tim had a surprising explanation for his changed look. He revealed that he was growing his hair out to support a charity campaign for cancer research. Despite this, a viral video clip showed Tim's appearance on Family Feud, where he made a bizarre statement about regretting his marriage, which took on a disturbing tone after he was arrested for murdering his wife. Many people believed that Tim's comment on Family Feud was a strange and unsettling prediction of what would eventually happen. They thought it showed that he had hidden feelings about his wife and was a sign that something bad was happening in their relationship. When the police looked into Tim's phone, they found that he had made a fake Facebook account under the name John Smith. During their investigation, they discovered that Tim had been searching for a specific type of bicycle on Facebook, a blue Schwinn bike with no reflectors on the wheels. This was an important discovery because it matched the description of a bike that was found abandoned just 1 block away from Tim's house. Despite having strong evidence against Tim, the detectives faced a significant obstacle when they arrested him. Tim was held in jail without the possibility of bail, but he requested a quick trial, which is his right under the law. Prosecutors were required to bring the matter to trial within 90 days of Tim's arrest. The prosecution faced a significant challenge in convincing a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that Tim murdered Rebecca due to the absence of a confession or DNA evidence. Juries typically look for these 2 key elements in criminal cases. To prove Tim's guilt in the murder of his wife Rebecca, the prosecution faced a significant challenge. Exactly 3 months after Rebecca's tragic murder in her home, Tim's trial began on May 23, 2023. During the trial, the prosecution presented several key pieces of evidence found at the crime scene. One notable piece of evidence was the shredded plastic fragments discovered around Rebecca's body. The prosecution argued that these fragments came from an owl's grocery bag, Further investigation revealed that similar bags were found in Tim's house. The prosecution alleged that Tim used these bags as a makeshift silencer when he shot his estranged wife multiple times. They claimed that the bags were used to muffle the sound of the gunfire, preventing it from being heard by others. The prosecution also presented DNA evidence, suggesting that Tim left behind DNA while using the Aldi bags. An expert testified that it was highly likely Tim contributed to the DNA found, and that his DNA could not be ruled out as a match for the DNA found under Rebecca's fingernails. The prosecution presented evidence suggesting that a crowbar found in Tim's basement might have been used to force open the window at the victim's house on the night of the murder. Although an expert testified that there were microscopic similarities between the crowbar and the window's prime arc, she couldn't conclusively say that the crowbar was involved. To build a stronger case, the prosecution presented records of several searches made on Tim's phone, including how to open my door with a crowbar, how to make a homemade pistol silencer, how to clean gunpowder off your hands, and average police response time in Quinney. The prosecution's expert witness testified that she compared the shell casings found at the crime scene to those found at Tim's house during the investigation. Her analysis revealed that 27 of the casings from Tim's home were fired from the same 9mm weapon used to kill Rebecca. When investigators searched Tim's house, they didn't find Rebecca's 9mm gun, which he had refused to return to her. Tim claimed he hadn't seen the gun in months before Rebecca's murder. During the trial, the defense had the opportunity to call witnesses but chose not to. After the 6-day trial, the jury took 4 hours to reach a guilty verdict, and Tim was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Despite claiming innocence and planning to appeal, Tim is behind bars, and Rebecca's family believes justice has been served. During the sentencing hearing, Rebecca's family read impact statements. One of her sisters addressed Tim, telling him how his actions affected his son's well-being. She stressed that his choices were causing his sons to suffer. Rebecca's sister vowed to keep her memory alive for her 3 sons, even after her passing. Kalamazoo County, Michigan. In the vibrant landscape of the 1990s, Kalamazoo County, Michigan was a place where hard work, strong relationships, and a shared commitment to progress defined the way of life. As of that period, the population of Kalamazoo County, Michigan stood at 223,411. It was a melting pot of people with different aspirations. Against the backdrop of this dynamic county, the 1990s unfolded as a transformative decade with one crime defining its history. The fateful day was November 17, 1990, a rather warm day in Kalamazoo County. A group of hunters were on their way to catch a good game in the Fulton State Game area. Among them were Bobby Brown and his stepfather, Doug Estes. The group decided to split up and thought that it was a good strategy going in different directions. Doug, Bobby, and others were focused on hearing even the slightest of sounds to detect the deer's movement. Winter days were often quiet, so when the sound of 2 gunshots echoed, it caught the attention of the group and the nearby residents. Just a few minutes after it, Helen Knops, a local resident, and her son heard a car screech off into a ditch just down the road from her house. Was this a coincidence, or could it be related to the shots that were recently fired? The timing and proximity could not have been a coincidence, but the fact remained that gunshots were not unusual in the area. Concerned and curious, Knops and her son approached the car and saw a man behind the steering wheel. Covered in sweat, he seemed nervous, and the look on his face was plain unfriendly. Knops thought he needed help, so she offered to call a tow truck for him, but he refused, saying that he ended up in the ditch because a deer had suddenly appeared and crossed the road. While the reason seemed genuine, after all, people used to come here and hunt deer, there was something amiss. He seemed to be in a hurry to leave, and Knops thought he was pretending to be calm, which was odd. She offered to call the police, but the man in the car was not at all seeking any help. He expressed disinterest in involving law enforcement, confident that someone else would fix his car, and just like that he drove away. But the echoes of the gunshots were still fresh. Bobby Brown thought that his stepfather had caught the deer because the sound came from the direction he went. Almost excited to congratulate him, he went on in the same direction and found Doug lying on his back on the ground in a pool of blood. The direction that Doug was hunting, I assumed he got a deer, so I decided I'd slowly walk back up. It was such an unusual sight that the first thought Bobby could muster was if it was a prank that Doug was trying to play. As reality sunk in, he could not believe what he was looking at. But there had been 2 gunshots. Could have meant that Doug was shot twice, however, he had only 1 bullet wound. The other possibility was that someone really tried killing him by firing 2 simultaneous shots and missed one. But when Bobby looked around in a frantic state, his eyes landed on another thing that he could not believe. There was another body lying face down. He checked for Doug's pulse first, but there was no hope. So he quickly ran over to the other man's body and rolled him over, but he was clearly dead. There was nothing Bobby could do. He ran off to ask for some help and quickly informed the police. The stage was set for a thorough investigation by the police, who arrived promptly to scrutinize the unsettling events that unfolded on that fateful day. The officers confirmed the presence of the 2 bodies that Bobby had already informed them about. The first job at their hands was to identify the victims, and soon enough the police knew who they were. Since Bobby had called the police, he had already identified his stepfather, Doug, and the other man was Jim Bennett, was a nature lover and was on a solo hunt that day. Both Doug Estes and Jim Bennett were hid in the back at close range through their hunting licenses. The weird thing was that the men had been shot using different firearms. One theory was that they had shot each other somehow, mistaking each other as the deer they had been looking for. The first issue was that both of them had been shot in the back, so it was almost impossible for them to hit the mark. And the second inconsistency arose when ballistic tests showed that Jim's muzzleloader was fully loaded and Doug's gun was nowhere to be found at the site. But that was only the first stage of confusion. The case was assigned to now retired Detective Bruce Wiersma and Sergeant Roy Ballett. Wiersma was overwhelmed by it as he was not experienced in homicide cases, let alone double homicide. The area had not even witnessed murder cases in a long time. However, Wiersma decided to be thorough with the details to ensure a proper procedure. As the investigation proceeded, they found out that Doug and Jim were strangers to each other. They had gone out to hunt separately, and it was only a coincidence that they were both killed at the same time. The detectives were already clueless. What could have been the motive of the kill? Had the victims been acquaintances, a mutual friend could have been identified. But now that there was no connection between them, it was all the more difficult to understand the case. But all hope was not lost, as their suspicions started building on Bobby Brown, the stepson of one of the victims. The detectives initially believed that the killings occurred because the target was Jim. According to them, Bobby had planned to rob him, but the robbery went wrong, and somewhere along the way, Doug was killed too. The police suspected that since Bobby's plan did not work, he had to call the police. Both Estes and Bennett's family believed that their loved one was not the main target, and Bobby's intentions and motives did not line up with the crime. No matter what the family said, the detectives' suspicion radar was on alert. To look for any evidence that they had missed earlier, the police decided to search the crime site again and ask the neighbors if they heard or saw something suspicious that day. Sure enough, the neighbors had heard the gunshots, but the testimony given by Helen Knops provided a new angle to the story. She helped the officers create a composite sketch of the man whose car landed in the ditch. The mystery man was becoming a suspect, but there was no way to link him to the crime. So the detectives proceeded to talk to other neighbors. After thoroughly conversing with them and delving into their accounts, a new name emerged from the shadows: Jeff Titus. Born in 1952, Jeff Titus was the owner of the property right behind the Fulton State Game area, where it shared a boundary. He served as a police officer in the U.S. Marine Corps and later worked in the security detail for President Richard Nixon. Later, he found employment as a security guard at a VA medical center. Alongside his professional pursuits, he enjoyed hunting and spending time outdoors, but he was protective of his property. He used to get mad when hunters used to wander into his estates. So, could Doug and Jim have angered Titus by crossing the border into his place? The question on the detectives' minds was, where was Titus at the time of the murder? When he was available in the evening of the same day, the detectives took him in for interrogation. As it turned out, Jeff Titus was on a deer hunting trip himself. He had gone off with a friend to an area near Battle Creek, more than 27 miles away from the Fulton Game State area at the property of an elderly couple. After several hours, Titus and his friend went to Burger King and drove back home. That was the moment when the story started mixing up. The missing gun that belonged to Doug Estes had finally been found fully loaded. It was with Titus. He said that he had found it about 30 yards away from the crime scene and thought to keep it after wiping it clean, so it could not be traced to someone else and no one could claim it. Although the discovery put Titus under the threat of a major suspicion, it proved that Doug and Jim hadn't killed each other, and someone else was responsible for their death. It definitely raised suspicions, but there was no way to prove if Titus' story was fake. And the most important fact was that he had a rock-solid alibi, so he was cleared. But the detectives knew something was not right. No matter how much they tried, the case seemed to get even more twisted. Ultimately, with no further leads or clues, the case went cold. In the year 2000, the double homicide case of Doug and Jim was reopened, and the case files were transferred to a new team of detectives led by now retired Sergeant Mike Workema and Detective Mike Brown. They started their investigation of the case by revisiting the neighbors, rechecking the clues, and reconsidering the old suspects. And sure enough, their initial suspicion landed on Bobby Brown. After a lot of back and forth, he was cleared. So, if there were no leads and clues, and the main suspect was cleared, who had killed those men that day? It seemed like a simple answer in hindsight, but the cold case detectives took their time and finally decided that no matter what the initial officers believed, the killer had to be Jeff Titus. More than a decade had passed since the crime. The memories of the people were foggy, and their statements were different. It was proving to be more difficult than they had expected. However, the detectives soon came up with a plausible theory. It suggested that, on November 17, 1990, the day of the murders, Titus had departed from the hunting property he was initially and returned to his own adjoining property near the Fulton State Game area. This action was driven by his suspicion that unauthorized individuals might have trespassed onto his land. Subsequently, it was believed that he perpetrated the killings before making his way back to the property in the Battle Creek area and returning home with his friend. In 2001, Titus, a married man and a father, found himself under arrest following reports from his co-workers at the Veterans Affairs Hospital. They disclosed the same thing, that Titus disliked trespassing hunters during the deer hunting season. According to the detectives, it was a good enough motive. Moreover, his co-workers also alleged that he openly discussed and boasted about the killings. The trial of Jeff Titus was conducted in 2002, led by the now retired Kalamazoo County Assistant Prosecutor Scott Brower. Unfortunately, the passage of time had taken a toll on Titus' alibi witnesses, rendering them unable to provide a testimony in his favor. His neighbor, Helen Knops, came to the witness stand, but nothing about the mystery man in his car came up, and the original investigators who had thoroughly cleared Titus of any wrongdoing were not summoned to testify during the trial. So despite the prosecutors not contesting the credibility of Titus' alibi, he was convicted and sentenced to 2 life terms in prison without the possibility of parole. He was incarcerated at Lakeland Correctional Facility in Coldwater, Michigan. But this story was far from over. During Titus' legal defense, led by attorney William Fett, a notable addition to the team was Howard Swabash, a recently retired polygraph examiner from the Michigan State Police. It was revealed that Swabash had been hired as a private investigator by FET. The court records indicated that Swabash's wife initiated divorce proceedings in January 2002, merely 5 weeks after Titus was charged with murder. The allegations of marital infidelity caused the marital breakdown of their marriage, although the identity of the other woman involved was kept hidden. On the eventful Halloween day of October 31st, 2002, 3 months after Titus' conviction by a jury, his wife Julie paid him a visit at Saginaw Prison, accompanied by their daughter and the private investigator Swabash. Julie informed Titus that she intended to file for divorce as they had not gotten along for years. The public records indicated that Swabash and Titus' ex-wife Julie eventually married in Florida in April 2005, merely 3 years after Titus' conviction, marking a surprising turn of events that raised questions about their connection and its potential impact on the case. Retired Sergeant Roy Ballett, who served with the Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Office, played a significant role in the initial investigation that led to Titus being cleared of suspicion in 1990. Block, feeling perplexed and dissatisfied with the course of events, confronted Swabash, the investigator, at Kalamazoo County Courthouse shortly after Titus' conviction. Block expressed his disappointment, questioning why Swabash had not even bothered to contact him to discuss his insights and sentiments regarding the case, particularly if he had taken on the role of investigating to establish Titus' innocence. Neither Block nor the other original detective was called as witnesses by the defense. They would have provided crucial testimony regarding Titus' alibi. The confrontation grew heated, with Swabash responding in a confrontational manner and using inappropriate language. He abruptly departed, leaving Block to reflect on the encounter. In an interview conducted over the phone from prison, Titus openly wondered if this defense team's private investigator had been truly committed to serving his interests. He said, "It's a shocker, and then I wonder, was he working for me? Was he working for an ulterior motive? I don't know." Titus consistently maintained his innocence throughout the entire course of events. However, it was a pivotal moment when Bruce Weirsamer and Roy Block, the two detectives involved in the initial investigation, made a public announcement, expressing their willingness to testify in support of Titus' alibi. This development caught the attention of the Innocence Clinic at the University of Michigan, prompting their involvement in the case. Simultaneously, the Michigan Attorney General's office initiated its own independent investigation. As both entities delved into the evidence, a significant revelation emerged. They found that there were several other hunter killings in the area, and it seemed like the work of a serial killer, a crucial detail that had not been disclosed to Titus' defense team during the original trial in 2002. Without any doubt, it raised doubts about any potential connection between Titus and the tragic deaths of Doug and Jim. These findings, coupled with other compelling evidence, prompted the Innocence Clinic to file a motion for a relief of judgment and a new trial on Titus' behalf. But the real turning point came in 2019, when Jacinda Davis, a 47-year-old esteemed producer renowned for her work in the true crime genre, stumbled upon her most captivating story. As she traveled the roads in search of inspiration for her upcoming series, The Killer in Question, her path led her to the heart of Michigan, drawn by the allure of Jack White's famed Third Man Records. Amidst her online exploration, a fascinating case of Jeff Titus caught her attention. Davis's journey intersected with that of Susan Simpson, a 34-year-old former attorney-turned-podcaster. Simpson, together with Rabia Chaudhry and Colin Miller, were the hosts of the acclaimed podcast Undisclosed. They met, talked together, discussed, and finally, Davis and Simpson found themselves embarking on a collaborative endeavor, uniting their narrative prowess to shed light on the enigmatic Titus case. The forthcoming season of Undisclosed, Simpson's podcast, was scheduled to be released on October 26, 2020. After it was aired, the audience was able to delve deep into the intricate details surrounding the controversial conviction and learn some things that were earlier shrouded in mystery. Simultaneously, on November 1, 2020, viewers tuned in to the debut episode of Killer in Question, a compelling 2-hour documentary that aired on Investigation Discovery. While researching for their podcast and the series, Davis and Simpson found that something in the story did not sit right. Davis said, "I can't think of another case where there are two sets of detectives that don't agree. The original detectives in this case absolutely, 100% cleared Jeff Titus and believe he is not guilty. And the cold case team is the opposite. They believe beyond a doubt that they have the right man." During their extensive investigation, they uncovered a significant breakthrough involving two crucial witnesses who had observed a car stuck in a ditch immediately following the gunshots. The fact that Helen Knops, a neighbor of Titus, could have easily identified Titus if he was in the car, raised more questions. Since the driver turned out not to be him, it left them wondering about the stranger's true intentions and why he was in such a frantic rush to flee the scene. Could he be the elusive murderer they were seeking? To their surprise, the composite sketch that was generated based on Knopf's testimony closely resembled Thomas Dillon, a notorious serial killer active in Ohio. Dillon had a history of targeting hunters, fishermen, and outdoor enthusiasts. In fact, according to FBI reports, Knopf herself had even identified him from a police lineup when he was eventually apprehended in 1993 for the murders of other hunters. Filled with hope, both Simpson and Davis believed that their stories would encourage individuals with crucial information about the Estes and Bennett murders to step forward. As Simpson pointed out, the mere act of sharing these narratives often leads to a ripple effect, prompting individuals to come forward with valuable insights that can be incorporated into the ongoing investigation. Davis shared their sentiment, believing that people hold untold stories within them. She acknowledged that memories may change over time, with small details sometimes fading away. However, original recollections tend to endure. Naturally, as they delved deeper into the case, both investigators began forming their own opinions regarding Titus' guilt. Simpson, initially unimpressed by the evidence, discovered compelling corroborations that aligned with the initial conclusions of the case's original investigators. The evidence against Jeff Titus simply did not hold up. Since 2019, Titus' case has undergone comprehensive review by the Conviction Integrity Unit within the Michigan State Attorney General's office. As the investigation into this possible wrongful conviction continued, none of the motions submitted by the Innocence Clinic had been granted, leaving Jeff Titus behind bars at the Lakeland Correctional Facility in Coldwater Branch County, Michigan, where he had to serve 2 life sentences. In the face of adversity, the Innocence Clinic made efforts in 2021 to secure Titus' release from the facility due to the COVID-19 outbreak. With a significant number of inmates at Lakeland testing positive for the virus, they sought an exceptional circumstance release on bond. Unfortunately, their plea was administered by a district judge who deemed it unwarranted. Davis and Simpson, the podcasters, were the initial sleuths who stumbled upon a potential link between the 1990 murders and the serial killer Dylan. Their investigative instincts led them to uncover Dylan's dark past, as he had confessed to the chilling murders of 5 hunters and outdoorsmen in Ohio back in 1993. Additionally, Dylan had been a prime suspect in another killing in Pennsylvania and divulged to his cellmate about his involvement in the deaths of 2 hunters in a county that he believed law enforcement would never tie to him. Although Dylan met his demise in prison on October 21, 2011, his connection to the case presented a compelling lead. Driven by their determination, Michigan Innocence Clinic Director David Moran embarked on a mission, making his way to the Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Office. Moran dedicated an arduous 6 hours meticulously sifting through the archives of the file room. With each document examined, the puzzle pieces began to align, shedding light on a potentially significant breakthrough in the investigation. As Moran continued his search for the truth, he unexpectedly found a special folder hidden deep in the archive. The folder was thin and held around 30 interesting pages. On the outside, it had the words "serial killer" written lightly in pencil. As Moran read through the pages, he became more and more convinced. These documents contained valuable information about Dylan and could be the key to their success in solving the case. What added another layer of astonishment was the realization that these vital documents had never been disclosed to the defense. It appeared that the prosecutor's office remained oblivious to their existence, leaving an unsettling gap in the knowledge presented during the trial. This discovery ignited a spark of hope within Moran, fueling his belief that their pursuit of justice was on the path to victory. According to Bruce Wiersma, the original detective who compiled the serial killer file, the reports concerning Dylan were included in the case file, and he strongly believed that Dylan was the perpetrator behind the crimes. On the other hand, Mike Workema, the retired cold case sergeant, stated that he never came across that particular file. He and other detectives on the cold case team claimed to be unaware of the alternate suspect. However, a police report surfaced among court documents indicating that at least one of the cold case detectives had knowledge of the file. Stuart Fenton, a former Kalamazoo County assistant prosecutor, held a different perspective. He expressed his belief that Titus was responsible for the murders. He firmly believed that the jury made the correct decision and that an innocent man was not wrongfully convicted. In light of the recent allegations, Fenton opined that the newfound information would unlikely have altered the outcome of the original trial. During his time in prison, Titus made a personal vow not to trim his beard until the day he regained his freedom. When the long-awaited call finally came on February 16, 2023, informing him of his impending release, overwhelming emotions flooded over him. "I just started bawling," Titus recalled. Moments later, as he resumed his work on the cards, tears of joy would often well up again, prompting him to momentarily bury his face in his hands. However, Kalamazoo County Prosecutor Jeff Titus said that a decision has not been made about if new charges will be filed. He said, "We're in the process of reviewing the case. It is a complicated factual and legal analysis that will take some time to process." On February 24, 2023, 71-year-old Jeff Titus was released from prison after spending more than 2 decades in prison for Doug Estes and Jim Bennett's 1990 murder case. His conviction was overturned. Titus said that, "It's been 22 years waiting for this day, and it should have never happened in the first place. I'm just ecstatic and overjoyed to finally be out where I can get out and do something. I want to see my grandkids. I haven't seen them. I want to see them." The moment of liberation from prison brought a flood of emotions that Titus struggled to put into words. As he stepped out into the free world, he was met by a supportive group of individuals who had played pivotal roles in his fight for justice. Attorney Moran, along with dedicated students from the Michigan Innocence Clinic, investigative podcasters Jacinda Davis and Susan Simpson, and the sons of the late Detective Roy Ballett, all stood by Titus' side during his newfound freedom. Detective Ballett, a stalwart believer in Titus' innocence, had passed away in January 2022, but his unwavering support left a lasting impact. While the cold case detective, Workema, agreed with the judge's decision to release Titus from prison based on the lack of awareness regarding Dylan, he remained convinced of Titus' guilt. "I still believe Jeff Titus is the killer," Workema asserted. "Considering his character and the actions he took, I believe he is the perpetrator. He is a dangerous individual, and I have apprehensions about him. I hope that now that he has gained his freedom, he will use it responsibly and make the right choices." With his newfound freedom, Titus engaged in activities he was deprived of for 2 decades. He immersed himself in the company of cherished friends and family, indulging in the food he had long missed. During his absence, rediscovering the joys of life, he enjoyed being with his grandsons, whom he had never met before, and even secured his driver's license. He said, "I can't express enough how grateful I am to be free and have the freedom to simply live again." Titus delighted in feeding deer and songbirds, and his artistic spirit remained alive as he continued to design and draw greeting cards. After almost 2 decades, justice was finally served to Jeff Titus, but the case of Doug Estes and Jim Bennett remained a mystery after the death of the serial killer Thomas Dillon. The case of Jaden Parkinson. Jaden Parkinson, born on September 26, 1996 in Folkestone, United Kingdom, Jaden is the youngest of 3 children. Her parents had a strained relationship. Family problems led to her parents' divorce when Jaden was only 7 years old. Jaden lives with her father. Although Jaden lives with her father, the relationship with her mother Samantha Shuri remains strong. Jaden and her mother talk on the phone every night. As Jaden entered her teenage years, her life became increasingly unstable. Her father often ignored her. She began smoking and drinking and spent time living with both parents. At the age of 13, Jaden ran away from her father's house and moved in with her mother, eventually winning a court order allowing her to stay there. Jaden was in a relationship with Ben Blakely, whom she met at the age of 14. Blakely had a profound influence on her, gradually changing her over time. Jaden was 15 when she started dating Ben, 20. The significant age gap worried Jaden's mother, but she couldn't stop her daughter from falling in love. Initially, their relationship was loving and romantic, but it gradually deteriorated over time, and their relationship became increasingly strained. Ben controlled every aspect of Jaden's life. She stopped wearing makeup and became increasingly withdrawn. He dictated what clothes she wore and isolated her from family and friends. As a result, Jaden moved out of her mother's house and into a shelter for women who were victims of domestic violence. Although the shelter's rules forbade Ben from visiting, he continued to exert complete control over Jaden's life. Jaden and Ben frequently had arguments, and at one point, Jaden even warned the hostel staff about Ben's aggressive behavior towards her. Ben exerted significant control over Jaden, dictating her every move and restricting her freedom. He took away her mobile phone, convincing her that she didn't need anything else as long as she had him. Ben also prohibited her from interacting with men and monitored her social media activity. As a result, Jaden stopped attending school. Jaden's communication with her mother, which was once a daily occurrence, dwindled to just 1 or 2 conversations per month. Her mother, Samantha, urged Jaden to return home and end the relationship with Ben, but Jaden refused. Ben's control over Jaden was both psychological and physical, and where Jaden was seen with visible bruises on her face. On November 30th, 2013, Jaden announced to her mother that she was pregnant. Hoping to change Ben, she believed that the baby would bring positive changes to their relationship and his lifestyle. Jaden envisioned the baby would bring them closer together and that Ben would return to the caring person she first met. Unfortunately, Ben has not changed. Once Ben gained complete control over Jaden, his true nature emerged. He isolated her from friends and family, leaving her financially dependent on him. The situation escalated to the point where Jaden was confined to her room, even restricted from using the bathroom without permission. Unbeknownst to Jaden, Ben was secretly dating other women, exerting the same manipulative control over them. Samantha learned about her daughter Jaden's pregnancy and asked her to come home, but Jaden declined, not wanting to cause her mother more trouble. When Jaden told her Ben about the pregnancy, he became enraged and denied being the father. He even threatened to post intimate photos and videos of Jaden on social media. Fearing Ben would follow through on his threat, Jaden reported him to the police a few days before she went missing. Ben had around 30 explicit photos and 13 videos of Jaden, which she desperately wanted to keep private. On December 3rd, Jaden failed to return to her hostel for the night. Knowing about the problems in Jaden's life, the police tried to find her, but were unsuccessful. They contacted Jaden's mother Samantha by phone, but she did not know where Jaden was. On December 4th, 2013, police received a report that Jaden was missing. Police contacted Jaden's boyfriend, Ben, to see if he had any information about her disappearance. However, Ben was uncooperative and hung up several times, claiming that he did not know where Jaden was, Jaden having run away from home several times before, so her initial disappearance didn't raise immediate concerns. The next day, Ben was arrested and taken to the police station, but not in connection with Jaden's disappearance. The arrest was due to a report that Jaden had filed a few days earlier, stating that she feared Ben would post private photos of her online. The police questioned Ben. Ben denied any intention to post the photos and was released on bail the same day. Samantha distributed flyers with Jaden's picture. In addition to distributing flyers, she also used social media platforms to publicize Jaden's disappearance, hoping to get clues for the case. The police analyzed security footage. They collected surveillance camera footage from the motel where Jaden lived. The footage showed the girl going out to meet Ben, but then did not return to her residence. On December 3rd, Jaden was seen again at Oxford railway station. Surveillance footage captured her walking inside with Ben, and nothing unusual occurred in the video. After tracking their movements, police discovered that Ben and Jaden had taken the train to Didcot, a town about 10 miles from Oxford. Jaden's last known location was the railway station in Didcot, where the footage showed her and Ben leaving the building. In the past, whenever Jaden ran away, she would usually contact her family within a day or two to let them know she was safe. This time, however, was different. Jaden had not contacted her family or friends, and there was no activity on her social media accounts. After reviewing surveillance camera footage showing Jaden boarding the train with Ben, he became the prime suspect in her disappearance. Police were certain that Ben knew where Jaden was and what had happened to her. The footage revealed that Ben returned to the train station alone, and there was no further sighting of Jaden. 1 week later, on December 10th, 2013, Ben Blakely was arrested by the police. Police wanted to question Ben to find out what happened to Jaden after they left the train station in Didcot together. At that point, the police had not ruled out the possibility that Jaden might be hiding of her own free will or that Ben might be holding her. During the interrogation, Ben displayed confidence. He claimed to have no knowledge of Jaden's whereabouts. According to Ben, he and Jaden had broken up, and she was now in a relationship with someone else. Ben suggested that the police should focus on speaking with Jaden's new boyfriend, as he believed this person might have more information about her disappearance. Ben appeared indifferent to Jaden's situation, saying that the fact that they had broken up and Ben had a new girlfriend made her situation irrelevant to him. He suggested that the police check Jaden's social media accounts to gather information about her recent activities and interactions. Ben Blakely was arrested on suspicion of kidnapping and murder, despite Jaden still being missing. The police interviewed Jaden's friends to see if she might have gone to a safe location, but they found out that Jaden had distanced herself from her friends after she started dating Ben. As a result, no one knew if she had a place to hide. During the search for Jaden, a taxi driver from Didcot provided vital information to the police. On December 4th, at around 1 a.m., the taxi driver picked up a passenger on a dirt road. The passenger, a young man with a large, heavy suitcase covered in mud, needed help lifting the suitcase into the taxi. The taxi driver became suspicious and wondered if he had accidentally witnessed a crime. The investigation revealed that the person who called the taxi was Ben Blakely's mobile phone. When questioned further, Ben refused to answer any further questions. Analysis of his phone location records showed that Ben had visited a number of locations in Ditka, including a disused rural shed where a taxi had picked him up that night. A team of police officers and sniffer dogs searched the shed as part of the investigation. It was also discovered that Ben and Jaden had visited the shed earlier. Police found a bracelet matching Jaden's near the scene. Trained sniffer dogs indicated the presence of a body inside the shed, but Jaden's body was not found. This led police to suspect a large suitcase was involved when Ben got into the taxi. Police have appealed to the public for assistance, asking anyone who saw a man carrying a large suitcase in World Didcot to come forward. Meanwhile, officers have conducted interviews at nearby homes to gather more information. Footage from the train station showed that Ben and Jaden were not carrying suitcases, which led police to wonder where Ben got the suitcases. It is also possible that the man described by the taxi driver was not Ben. On December 14th, police discovered that Ben Blakely's grandmother, grandfather, and younger brother Jake lived near the abandoned warehouse. When police visited Ben's grandmother, she later explained that Ben had taken a suitcase from her a few days earlier. He had arrived in a hurry, dumped the contents of the suitcase on the floor, and left without explanation. Ben's grandmother said he returned home 2 days after Jaden went missing and threw his mountain bike into the shed. However, the bike was dirty when he returned. She also reported that 2 shovels were missing, only to reappear later, covered in a thick layer of dirt. The presence of the 2 shovels raised questions about Ben's intentions and the potential involvement of an accomplice. Notably, Ben and his younger brother Jake Blakely, 17, were also acquaintances of Jaden. Witnesses reported seeing Ben and Jake riding mountain bikes together. As the investigation began, police found sufficient cause to suspect Jake of being involved in the crime and subsequently arrested him. The suitcase that Ben had returned to his grandmother's barn was sent to a laboratory for analysis to determine if it contained Jaden's DNA. Based on the available evidence, police developed a theory that Jaden was killed in an abandoned barn, then placed in the suitcase and moved to another location for burial. However, searching for Jaden's body in the vast fields surrounding Didcot seemed challenging. To help narrow down the search area, the police used aviation to aid in the investigation and estimate the likely location of Jaden's burial site. Through aerial photography, police identified 10 locations with significant recent changes in soil surface. The police initially examined several sites, but found no leads on Jaden's body. Before they could inspect all 10 locations, a new lead emerged when Jake Blakely began cooperating with police. He directed them to check his uncle's grave at a local cemetery in Didcot, near All Saints Church. This cemetery was one of the original 10 locations, although it was considered a low priority due to the common occurrence of soil changes in cemeteries. Police secured the cemetery after receiving information from Jake Blakely, who suggested that Jaden's body might be buried in his uncle's grave. This method of concealment had never been seen by police before. Jake and Ben's uncle reportedly died in 2006. The new developments in the case have attracted widespread media attention, as this is the first case in the country where a victim's body was concealed in an existing grave. A tent was set up in the cemetery to facilitate a forensic examination. Following this setup, Jaden's family received devastating news. Her body had been found in the grave of Ben and Jake Blakely's uncle. The body was found without clothes, and no jewelry was present. Forensic experts discovered evidence that Jaden had been severely beaten before her death. Specifically, her neck showed signs of strangulation, which was confirmed as the cause of death by the pathologist, with asphyxia being the official cause. While in prison awaiting trial, Ben Blakely changed his defense strategy, and he and his attorney drafted a confession letter stating that Ben was indeed responsible for Jaden's death. However, he maintained that the act was not intentional. According to his testimony, a heated argument led him to push Jaden, causing her to fall from a bridge near an abandoned warehouse. Ben tried to revive Jaden, but was unsuccessful. He initially buried her in another location. He then moved the body to the cemetery, where it was buried in his uncle's grave. However, the autopsy results contradicted his story. There was no evidence that she had fallen, but instead, her face showed signs of blunt force trauma. The official cause of death was asphyxiation by strangulation, suggesting that Ben's story was not true. Ben Blakely was trying to reduce his guilt in Jaden's death. Jaden's father passed away due to heart problems before the trial started. On June 23, 2014, Ben Blakely was in court, and it became clear that he showed no regret for his actions. His behavior was provocative and aggressive, revealing his indifference to taking the life of Jaden and her unborn child. During the 4-week trial, it was revealed that Ben Blakely from Reading, Berks, had a history of being a violent and controlling partner. 3 of his previous girlfriends testified against him, sharing their experiences of being in abusive relationships with him. They reported that he would confiscate their phones, physical assault them, and even grab them by the throat if they responded back or if he suspected them of cheating. Throughout the trial, Ben received multiple warnings from the judge for using profanity in the dock and on the witness stand, where he repeatedly shouted at the prosecutor, Richard Leam. His outbursts were so intense that Jaden's mother and other family members were forced to leave the courtroom in tears on multiple occasions. The judge, Patrick Eccles, was also pushed to his limits. He ordered Ben Blakely to be taken to the cells to continue the trial without him. Jake Blakely, who was under 18 at the time, said he had no idea what was inside the suitcase and thought he was burying weapons or dead animals. He was persuaded by his brother, Ben, who promised him an Xbox console and $100 in exchange for carrying out the mission. The prosecutor alleged that the crime was premeditated, suggesting that Ben Blakely intentionally took Jaden to a secluded location where he could commit the crime without being seen. It is believed that Blakely's actions were driven by a desire to control Jaden's life, which was disrupted by her pregnancy and her desire to start anew. Ben Blakely, who did not want to become a father Jaden's mother, Samantha Shrewsbury, has spoken out in support of creating a domestic violence registry. In an interview with Sky News, she expressed her desire to prevent other families from experiencing similar tragedies. She recalled the traumatic experience of identifying her daughter's body and stated that the memory would haunt her forever. In the year leading up to Jaden's death, Samantha believed that Jaden was the target of Ben's abuse. Samantha remembers an incident where Ben came to Samantha's apartment building the day after he verbally and physically abused Jaden. He managed to enter the building and banged on the door, demanding to see Jaden. Samantha refused to let him in, and in response, he spat on Samantha before leaving. That same day, Jaden went outside to smoke, and unfortunately, Ben found her. Samantha did not see or hear from Jaden for the next 2 weeks. During that time, Samantha assumed that Jaden had gone to Ben's house. As a result, it became difficult to contact Jaden because Ben had destroyed her phone or SIM card. Despite his horrific behavior, which included burning, beating, and starving Jaden, Ben remained in denial about his true nature. The jury deliberated for 20 hours before returning their verdict. Ben Blakely was found guilty of willfully murdering Jaden Parkinson. The judge told Ben Blakely that he took 17-year-old Jaden Parkinson to a remote area near Upton, where he strangled her to death. The judge also noted that Ben's behavior towards Jaden was marked by irrational jealousy, physical abuse, and emotional manipulation throughout their relationship. The judge found that Ben Blakely had taken control of Jaden's daily life. To isolate her, he took away her phone and restricted her movements while she was in the boarding house, even to the point of not allowing her to use the toilet, forcing her to urinate in plastic bottles. Despite Ben's abusive behavior, Jaden fought to leave him. Jaden finally found the courage to end their relationship last November. Ben threatened to share intimate photos of the two of them publicly. The court sentenced Ben Blakely, who was sentenced to life in prison for attempted murder. Ben's younger brother, Jake Blakely, was sentenced to 3 years in prison for perverting the course of justice. Case of Cecile Block. 3.5 decades after the chilling and mysterious murder of 11-year-old French girl Cecile Block, the veil of secrecy was finally lifted by the revelation of DNA evidence. Unveiled alongside this newfound truth after the 35-year hunt was a horrifying connection. The same malevolent hand that took Cecile's innocence also stained France with the blood of other victims during the dark period. From 1986 to 1994. To make it worse, the chilling revelation was that the very person responsible for these heinous acts was someone who was supposed to be a guardian of the law, a gendarme and a policeman at the time of the murders. This is the tragic tale of Cecile Block. It is the fateful morning of May 5, 1986. The universe seemed to conspire against 24-year-old Luc Block, with the day kicking off on the wrong foot. At first, his alarm clock didn't go off, and to make matters worse, nobody in the Block household had the foresight to rouse him from his restless slumber. Luc, now in a mad dash to get to work, also had to make sure his young sister wasn't late to school. With a sense of urgency gnawing at his heels, he calls out to his little sister, telling her to hasten her preparations for school as he hurriedly leaves the apartment. In those days, it was common for children to go to school on their own. Every morning on weekdays, the parents Jean-Pierre and Suzanne Block would embark on their own journeys to work by 8 a.m. Luc too would depart the family apartment, leaving just before Cecile, who typically set off for her classes around 8:45 a.m. Lunchtime brought a cherished routine. Cecile would return home alone, savoring a comforting bowl of soup before serenading the household with her beloved violin. This gifted young girl was a maestro of melodies and really loved music. She harbored an affection for dogs and also excelled at school. At noon, her loving mother, Suzanne, would routinely dial the family apartment to make sure her daughter got home safely and had taken her lunch. But on that fateful day, an eerie silence met her call. The girl didn't pick up the phone, and this would lead to a horrific revelation that would create many questions of what had truly transpired on this fateful day. Let me take you back to the moment Luc Block embarked on his daily journey to work. As he stepped out of the apartment, the darkness of the landing greeted him yet again. There was no light for the third consecutive day. Frustration coursed through him as his fingers fumbled in the inky darkness to find the elevator button. The only functioning elevator glided to a halt on the 3rd floor, and inside stood a well-dressed young man. This man, possibly in his late 20s, possessed an athletic build with a pockmarked face. Luc, feeling a twinge of embarrassment, extended a cordial greeting, then disembarked on the 1st floor. The stranger wished him a strangely emphatic, "Good day." Something about this encounter struck Luc as peculiar. The man's politeness appeared excessive for a stranger. It was almost unnerving. In hindsight, Luc would recall the haunting final words uttered by this strange man. "Have a very, very good day." Little did he realize that in a matter of minutes, this very man would perpetrate the unspeakable to his young sister that would forever leave a scar in his heart. The clock struck 8:20 a.m. and within the building, the concierge perused a fresh newspaper while neighbors bustled about their morning routines. None among the building's residents could fathom that in just half an hour, young Cecile would meet her tragic fate. A fate that awaited her lifeless form in the shadowy depths of the building's basement, a staggering 3 floors beneath the building that was once her peaceful home. Suzanne, her heart sinking with each unanswered call, began to entertain a glimmer of hope that Cecile might be at her friend's house. She dialed the number, praying for a reassuring voice on the other end, but her fear intensified. As her friend confirmed the chilling truth, Cecile hadn't been to school, and she hadn't seen her that day either. By 1 p.m., panic had engulfed the parents, driving them to sprint back into the apartment, their frantic voices echoing as they desperately called out for their beloved daughter. Cecile was nowhere to be found. Suzanne's gaze fell upon her daughter's absent school bag, a sign that she had indeed departed. But to where? Meanwhile, Jean-Pierre initiated a series of agonizing calls to local hospitals. Their anxious pleas met with the same heartbreaking reply. No girl matching Cecile's description had been admitted. In the building's lobby, the parents beseeched the concierge to aid in the search for their missing child. With urgency fueling their every step, they raced to the police station, scouring the nearby streets and playgrounds as they went. Cecile was known for her unwavering attendance at school, and there were no significant issues at home to explain her absence. The question loomed large. Why had she left and where had she gone? The concierge, now joined by 2 concerned neighbors, embarked on a painstaking search of the building floor by floor, inching their way downwards, but the haunting truth remained. Cecile had vanished without a trace. All that remained was to descend into the foreboding cellar. The first room they entered was empty and devoid of any answers, while the second room stood locked. They then entered the third room, a chamber of forgotten clutter that obscured any immediate revelation. The room was a chaotic maze of forgotten possessions, a lot of junk from years past, so densely entangled that nothing could be seen at a single glance. In a breathless moment, a flashlight pierced the darkness, casting a feeble glow upon the basement's desolation. At first glance, it appeared vacant, but just as they were about to retreat, at the corner of his eye, one man caught a glimpse of something amiss in the periphery. A grimy, time-worn carpet that seemed to conceal something beneath it. He summoned the others, a glimmer of dread tugging at their hearts. Unfortunately, they found who they were looking for, but not the way they hoped they would find her. Outside the house, police cars and an ambulance had already arrived at the scene when Cecile's parents returned. They rushed past the gathered crowd in the basement. It was too late. The innocent life of young Cecile had already been taken. Her innocence brutally shattered. The wheels of justice began to turn, as a relentless investigation was launched into the heart-wrenching homicide. The grim investigation unveiled a chilling timeline. The malevolent intruder had infiltrated the block, lingering within its walls, and shared a sinister 40-minute encounter with Cecile, with witnesses testifying that he had departed the building at 9:20 a.m. They all echoed a hauntingly consistent description of the suspect. A dark-haired young man, aged between 25 and 30, his face marred by the cruel reminders of severe acne scars, the very same man who had exchanged strange pleasantries with Luke that morning. Drawing from the accounts of 6 witnesses and Luke's recollection, the police conjured a rough sketch of the male factor, which found its way onto the pages of newspapers across France. While investigators managed to secure the assailant's biological material and ascertain his blood type, the nascent era of DNA forensics limited their progress. The evidence, a tantalizing puzzle piece, remained locked in a cold, waiting silence as the promise of breakthroughs in forensic science beckoned from the shadows. Yet the revelations remained scant, leaving a trail of unanswered questions and a community haunted by uncertainty. Just a month prior, the city had shuddered at the news of a similar predator haunting their midst. A man bearing an uncanny resemblance to the male factor now under investigation had assaulted an 8-year-old girl in an elevator. Yet miraculously she had survived to share her harrowing tale with investigators. This brave child, known only as Sarah, recounted how the man had cunningly posed as a police officer during the ordeal. What sent shock waves through the community were the eerie parallels emerging in 3 additional sexual assault cases. In these grim chapters, the assailant employing the same sinister ruse had targeted a 26-year-old woman and 2 young girls aged 11 and 14. Each victim had fallen prey to his apparent police identification card and the menacing glint of handcuffs, tools of restraint that he employed with chilling precision. The authorities were gripped by a sense of urgency as they grappled with the unsettling question. Was this a deceitful ploy to gain the trust of unsuspecting victims, Or was he actually a police officer? Their suspicions were stoked not only by the violence inflicted upon his victims, but also by the chillingly calculated tactics he employed. A nagging intuition lingered among investigators, a conviction that this male factor was no ordinary criminal. Their gut told them he was either a sworn officer or a gendarme, a belief that would later be chillingly confirmed. However, capturing this predator was far from straightforward, as he continued to elude the clutches of justice with diabolical cunning. Despite widespread distribution of the sketch to the local population, it proved futile in unmasking the perpetrator. By the close of 1987, a sinister shadow had been cast over a number of crimes, all attributed to this man, based on his distinctive appearance and chilling demeanor. The investigation remained in an agonizing deadlock for years, swinging back and forth between closed and reopened status. In a cruel twist of fate, the latest DNA tests conducted in a bid for justice yielded inconclusive results, shrouding the identity of the perpetrator in a veil of impenetrable darkness. Tragically, the parents of the young victim never lived to witness the moment of reckoning. Suzanne met her untimely end in a devastating traffic accident in 1989, while Jean-Pierre departed the world in 2011. Their hearts bore the heavy burden of never knowing the face of the monster who had stolen their beloved Cecile away forever, leaving a haunting legacy of unresolved pain and injustice. The embers of the unresolved mystery began to rekindle, lighting the way for the determined cold case detectives. They uncovered a piece of evidence that sparked a glimmer of hope. The killer, known to drive a white car, had once been a member of the prestigious gendarmerie. His chilling history culminated in a final crime committed near a gendarmerie training center. The techniques he used displayed the unmistakable signs of police and military training. In 2021, the police made a bold move. They called in around 750 former police officers who had worked in the Paris area during the time of the crimes. Among them was the very man who had evaded justice for so long, who was called in for questioning on September 29, 2021. The investigators' goal was clear: to collect the DNA of these suspects, hoping fervently that the murderer might finally be identified among them. The plot took a harrowing twist on September 24th, when a summons landed in the hands of a man, compelling his appearance for questioning on September 29th. The demand extended further, requiring the surrender of a DNA sample. However, in a startling turn of events, the narrative pivoted on September 27th when the man's wife reported him missing. As the clock ticked relentlessly towards the fateful date, the puzzle was far from complete. 2 days later, on September 29, 2021, in a quiet town in the south of France, tragedy struck in the form of a suicide. François Verrev, a 59-year-old man, chose to end his own life, leaving behind a farewell note that laid bare a haunting confession. Among its chilling lines, it read, "I admit being a great criminal who committed unforgivable acts until the end of the 1990s. In a heart-wrenching conclusion, DNA tests revealed the somber truth. The man authorities had hunted relentlessly for years. The pockmarked man, the elusive predator, was unmasked as François Verrev. However, much about his background remained shrouded in mystery. Born on January 22, 1962 in France, he had grown up under the stern gaze of a strict father, a stepmother, and 2 stepsisters. His biological mother had succumbed to the ruthless grip of the flu. In his youth, he had harbored an unsettling fascination with horror movies, perhaps offering a glimpse into the darkness that would later consume him. In 1983, François embarked on a new chapter as he moved to Paris and joined the National Gendarmerie. By June 1985, he had married and took it upon himself to construct a family home from the ground up, a testament to his ambitions. In the eyes of a former friend, he wore the dual masks of kindness and decency, but his temper lurked just beneath the surface, a volatile element that could erupt without warning. Behind this facade, however, lay a chilling truth. He was completely the opposite of the positive traits he may have portrayed to others. For innocent young girls had suffered beneath his sinister hand, miraculously escaping his clutches, all except for young Cecile Block. François' malevolence didn't stop there. In 1987, he cold-bloodedly murdered 2 adults, 38-year-old Jill Politi, and his devoted housekeeper, Irmgard Muller. Armed with crucial DNA evidence, investigators embarked on a gripping journey, determined to unravel the secrets of a malefactor whose dark deeds seemed endless. They fervently believed his sinister trail of crimes extended far beyond those already uncovered, driving them to delve deeper into unsolved cases, searching for hidden connections that could reveal the full extent of his reign of terror. Unfortunately, earthly justice may never hold him accountable for his atrocities, and retribution seems out of reach. The specter of his deeds looms large, leaving the question of inevitable justice to the realm beyond. As this harrowing tale unfolds, we are left with unanswered questions, wounds that may never fully heal, and the haunting presence of a man who committed unspeakable acts. Francois Vero may have evaded earthly justice, but his actions are forever etched in the indelible ink of infamy. Amidst the darkness, a glimmer of hope stands as a testament to the relentless tenacity of those who pursued answers. With advancements in DNA technology, the truth emerged from the depths of despair. In the afterlife, in the realm beyond, justice may yet find its elusive mark, allowing the innocent souls scarred by his malevolence to finally rest in peace. In the shadow of these chilling revelations, let us remember all those who suffered at the hands of this predator. Their memory lives on as a reminder that even in the darkest corners of our world, the relentless pursuit of justice can be a beacon of hope. As we close this chapter of human frailty and malevolence, let us remember Cecile, not for the darkness that took her, but for the vibrant spirit she once embodied. For every life taken too soon, there remains a legacy that defies the shadows, a testament to the unwavering hope that someday justice will prevail. May the souls of Cecile and all the other victims rest in eternal peace. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of unsolved mysteries. Cold cases not only challenge our understanding of the past, but also ignite our curiosity and determination for answers. Remember to subscribe to stay updated on our latest investigations. And if you have any information regarding the cases we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out. Together, we can shed light on the shadows of the past and bring closure to those who seek it. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.